Parshas Metzora Shabbos Hagadol. You know, once we hit Shabbos Hagadol, so Pesach is mamash here. And the winter just shot by, even though we had an extra month. We had an extra month between Sukkot and Pesach this year, but here we are. 1 week from tonight will be B'dikas Chametz. Just a programming note. We're hoping that in Metzora Hashem this coming week, we're going to do the shir on Wednesday night. Because Thursday night, everybody's going to be a little tired, a little busy. So we'll do it Wednesday night. We'll give a special shir in Metzora Hashem in Yonei Pesach, this coming Wednesday night, right here, Bikur Cholim headquarters. Now, Shabbos Hagadol. Shabbos Hagadol, Gadol doesn't just mean big. Gadol means great. And if our Chachamim gave this Shabbos the name Shabbos Hagadol, the great Shabbos, it means that it wasn't just great many years ago. It means that every year when we come to this Shabbos, when we come to the Shabbos before Pesach, and there are many aspects about this Shabbos. Of course, first of all, we try to brush up and practice and learn the halachos of the Pesach coming up, and in the yotzros that we say this Shabbos. Also, it's beautiful if you actually look at the meaning and study it a little bit beforehand. You have an entire piyut that gives us all the halachas of Pesach, about the isurim of Pesach, about chometz on Pesach, about kashering on Pesach, about the seder on Pesach. There's very, very interesting yotzros this week, and I would recommend having a little look at it before you daven. You'll find it very, very enlightening. However, there's still a parsha this week, Parshas Metzora this week, which is actually very similar to last week's parsha, Parshas Tazria. And for the second week in a row, our parsha speaks about the inyan of negoim, the nega of tzaras that happened to either a person, or to the house, or to the clothing of a person. And we speak about again in this week's parsha the inyanim of a person that gets tzaras. And the Nesivos Shalom tells us, as always, as we mentioned many times, that the Torah is nitzchias. And imagine we have two parshias, Parshas Tazria, Parshas Metzora. Both weeks are packed with lessons about tzaras. And of course, Bizman Hazeh, we know that all the major players in this thing of tzaras, all the major players in the parsha, the kohen that can do the avodah, the karbonos, it doesn't exist anymore today. We hope it will be nogea to us very soon. We're in Chodesh Nisan. We're hoping that this year Taka will have a geula, and all these things will be very pertinent to us. But in the meantime, right now, all these things, all the major parts and the things that we discuss here are not really nogea to us now. So the Nesivos Shalom tells us that although they are not pertinent at this very moment, but the Torah still comes to teach us lessons from tzaras for today. And so really, how do we understand that the principles of tzaras apply to us today? How is that possible? And how do we bring that down to our level? How do we see that it's nogea for us today? So let's talk about it a little bit. So the Targum Unclus, the Targum that we are mavasedra with, the Targum that's in every Chumash, on the side of the Chumash, right? The Targum Unclus translates the nega tzaras, the affliction of tzaras, he translates as machtesh segiru. And what does that mean? Machtesh segiru means that is a sickness, it is an illness of what segiru? Of being locked away, closed away, and put, like we know, the Metzora is sort of separated and put away, and that's what it's called. The whole nega of tzaras is called machtesh segiru. An affliction or an illness of being closed away. And the Zohar tells us, how do we see, in what way is a Metzora closed up? So the Zohar goes through it a little more in detail, and the Zohar tells us that all the good and all the light in the world, from all of that, the Metzora is closed off from that. And Rashi tells us, gives us a little reading into why a Metzora is closed off of that. Rashi tells us that by the very fact that the Metzora, one of the famous and big reasons, as we mentioned last week, that someone gets tzaras is because of Lashon Hara. One of the reasons is speaking Lashon Hara and slandering and causing other people, it's causing husbands and wives and friends to become distant from each other. And Rashi tells us that you, the Metzora, you are the person you thought you were being very helpful, and you thought that it was really your responsibility to talk negative about other people, to talk to someone about someone else, and you were so high and mighty and you thought you were doing the right thing. But ever since you caused that separation, you caused the strife, you caused machlokas among people, so now the punishment for this person is machtesh segiru, like the Targum says. The punishment for the person who speaks Lashon Hara and now gets tzaras is that you are now separated, you are isolated from society, and you need to be alone. You need to be away from everyone else. And Nesivos Shalom says, for a Jew, that is the worst kind of punishment. In other words, there are other punishments, and sometimes a person will get a punishment, but the Nesivos Shalom says that for a Yid, to be told that you now must be separate. In other words, Hashem wants to distance you a little bit, and you are not part of Hashem's family at this moment. You're not part of Klal Yisrael as we know it. That is the biggest punishment. That is the worst thing, really, that can be told and happen to a person. Where Hashem says, right now, just a little further. As we've said so many times, and we mentioned Nesivos Shalom as a theme, and he says that all 613 mitzvahs in the Torah have one matara, have one goal, and the goal of all 613 mitzvahs is to bring a person closer to Hashem. Uvoy sidbak. From those mitzvahs, you should cleave to Hashem. You should be closer to Hashem. So the purpose of every person's life, from the minute you wake up in the morning until you go to sleep at night, the purpose of every person's life, whatever action you do and whatever mitzvah you do, is to bring you closer to Hashem. And here in this case, Hashem is telling you, you caused machlokes, you spoke Lashon Hara, you separated friends from each other, you were the cause that a husband and wife should be a little separate from each other right now. You know what? Not right now. You need to be a little bit distant from that. The Metzora did to the contrary. The Metzora did everything the opposite of the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. You spoke Lashon Hara, you need to be distanced a little bit. So when the Kohen sends the Metzora away, you know what the Kohen says? The Torah tells us last week in Parshas Tazria, Umar'ei hanega amoik me'or b'soroi, that the Kohen sees the nega, and he sees that the nega is deeper. It's deeper than the actual skin. So the Nesivos Shalom says, the way we look at it, you know what the Kohen is saying? That it's not just a surface kind of thing. What you see is on the surface. You see the tzaras. But umarei hanega amoik, there's a much deeper reason that this happened to the person. The Kohen knows that it's not simply a physical, topical ailment over here. There's something deeper that is wrong. And you know, if you take a look at it, if you think about it, sometimes a person will have like a rash. Let's say a person has a rash on their skin. So sometimes you go to a doctor and they'll say, oh, it's just some kind of skin irritation. So take some sort of topical ointment, you put it on, and it's going to get better. But what if a person has a rash? A person has something on their skin, but that rash sometimes comes from an infection, which is internal. It's inside the person. So if I give you some sort of topical ointment to put on it, is it going to heal that? No. It's inside. It's amoik me'or b'soroi. There's an internal reason. There's something that really we have to get to the root of the matter. The root of the matter is that what you did, that you spoke Lashon Hara, that you spoke about somebody else. The Kohen sees it's amoik me'or b'soroi. And because you spoke this Lashon Hara, the Torah says that you need some sort of very strong medication. You know what that medication is? Machtesh segiru. That medication for this person that caused so much machlokes and strife, that medication, because it's amoik me'or b'soroi, it's not just a topical thing. The Kohen sees deeper. The Kohen sees that this person needs a little bit time away. He needs a stronger type of medication. And as we said, for a Jew, the greatest pain is one of solitude, of one of loneliness. We thrive on the fact when we're part of Klal Yisrael, when we're together as one, when unity and when there's peace among all of us, and we're part of Klal Yisrael. And as we mentioned last week too, that in order to reconnect to society, in order to come back and reconnect, you know what? We said you have to come to the Kohen. You have to reconnect yourself to Klal Yisrael. You have to reconnect yourself to the Kohen, which represents the good and the good people of Klal Yisrael. So the Metzora who caused strife among others, he has to feel this punishment, the punishment of real loneliness. And when he learns that lesson, and when he goes out and he thinks about it, and he learns that lesson, then you can come back. Now let's go back to the theme that we started with. We want to know, how can we work on this? How can we work on these lessons? This Shabbos is Shabbos Hagadol. And Shabbos Hagadol is where we really, unofficially, we begin to inaugurate the Yom Tov of Pesach. And what is the Yom Tov of Pesach? Yom Tov of Pesach celebrates the time where Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, and Hashem brought us all together as one. Hashem created the nation of one unity, the nation of Klal Yisrael. He made us all together, not you and you and you separately. Hashem made all of us together. On this Yom Tov of Pesach, Hashem made all of us together as the Am HaNivchar. And this Hisoris comes around every single year when it comes to Shabbos Hagadol. On one hand, this week we have the Parsha of the Metzora. And the Metzora, as we just spoke the entire shir, the Metzora caused Pirud. The Metzora caused Machlekes by speaking Lashon Hara. And on the other hand, we have Shabbos Hagadol, which we begin to bring in Pesach, where Pesach is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought us all together, Ba'achdus. So if there was ever a time to understand the lesson of a Metzora, if there was ever a time we want to get past the sickness of talking about other people and causing strife in Klal Yisrael, it's a beautiful time to start and to contemplate it, to think about it on Shabbos Hagadol now. The Torah in our Parsha teaches us what loneliness really is. And this time of the year, though, teaches us what we could be and how we should be when we're together. And I'll just tell you, it's interesting, today in the 21st century, it's interesting that people consider, how do you consider being together? Being together at Klal Yisrael is we have things that are common to every member of Klal Yisrael. And sometimes people think that what makes a person happy and popular together is how many friends, how many contacts they have in their phone. Or people think that what makes a person popular is how many friends or likes they have on Facebook. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. But that's what people think makes a person, oh, he must be popular, he must be happy. It's interesting, they say that professional athletes that have millions and millions of people following them, whether it's on social media, whether it's in the stadiums, whatever it is, people that cheer them on, millions of people, sometimes they're the most lonely people in the world. So the amount of people that follow you, or the amount of people that are in your phone contacts, that doesn't make Klal Yisrael. That doesn't make unity. That doesn't make a person happy. And this whole Parsha tells us, in Parshas Metzora, when we send the Metzora chutz l'machane, the Parsha is teaching us a lesson of what loneliness really is. I happen to see, there's a Rav today in Muncie, who's a friend that I know him for many years, and I saw something that he said last Shabbos, it's Rabbi Daniel Stown, very up-and-coming, popular, wonderful person. And he was mentioning also about Metzora, and he said, you know what, in Metzora, it says that he went out of the Machane, and he was alone. But what does alone mean? There's a machlekes actually among the Poskim, there's a machlekes whether the Metzora was the only Metzora there. It may have been other people there too. But you know what? When you're away from Klal Yisrael, it doesn't matter how many people are there. You're still alone. And it's time that we learn that lesson. We're coming out to Shabbos Hagadol and Pesach. Let's learn that lesson. Achdus, bring ourselves together. And this should be the great Shabbos, Shabbos Hagadol.